The cold metal walls of the new dawn hummed with a low vibration that Jake Morrison had grown to hate over the past 3 centuries. He opened his eyes slowly as the cryogenic pod systems brought him back to consciousness for what felt like the 1000th time. The familiar taste of recycled air and chemical preservatives filled his mouth as he sat up, his muscles aching from the long sleep. Amy Foster stood beside his pod, her face bearing the same grim expression she had worn for decades. She held a data tablet in her hands, and Jake could see from her posture that the news was not good. The bridge lights cast harsh shadows across her features as she waited for him to fully wake up. "How long this time?" Jake asked, his voice rough. "From disuse." 18 months, Amy replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "We had to move the ship twice. The Zetherian patrols are getting closer to our sector." Jake swung his legs over the side of the pod and reached for his uniform. The fabric felt strange against his skin after so many months in the preservation gel. Around him, 11 other pods remained sealed, their occupants still locked in artificial sleep. Only essential personnel were awakened for each shift, and even then, only when absolutely necessary. "Any word from the other ships?" he asked as he pulled on his boots. Amy shook her head. "Radio silence from the Phoenix and the Liberty. The others are maintaining their positions, but we've lost contact with 3 more vessels over the past year. We're down to 9 ships now, maybe fewer." Jake closed his eyes and felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders once again. 9 ships out of what had once been the mightiest fleet in the galaxy. 9 ships carrying the last remnants of Va. Humanity, drifting through space like ghosts, while the rest of the universe celebrated their extinction. They walked together through the narrow corridors of the ship, past empty quarters and silent machinery. The new Dawn had been built to house 5,000 crew members, but now it carried barely 300 souls. Most of them slept in the cryogenic bays, waiting for a day that might never come. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft beeping of monitoring equipment. 2 crew members sat at their stations, their faces illuminated by the glow of their screens. They looked up as Jake entered, hope flickering briefly in their eyes before reality set in again. "Show me the latest intelligence reports," Jake said. As he settled into the captain's chair, Amy activated the main display, and images of the galaxy filled the screen. The Galactic Confederation controlled over 2,000 star systems now, their territory marked in cold blue light. 12 alien species had banded together under Zetherian leadership, and their propaganda spoke of peace and prosperity across the stars. "They're calling it the Golden Age," Amy said, her voice bitter. 300 years of uninterrupted peace and progress. They've built monuments on every world they control, celebrating the end of what they call the Dark Times. Jake studied the star maps, noting the locations that had once been human colonies. New Angeles, Olympia Station, the great shipyards of Titan. All of them now bore alien names and housed alien populations. The histories had been rewritten so completely that most species in the galaxy had forgotten humans had ever existed. "What about Earth?" Jake asked, though he dreaded the answer. "They renamed it Terra Pacifica," Amy replied. "It's become the crown jewel of the Confederation. They've turned it into a paradise world for the alien elite. No trace of human civilization remains on the surface." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. Earth, the birthplace of humanity, had become a symbol of their defeat. He had seen the images in previous briefings. Where New York had once stood, gleaming crystal spires reached toward the sky. The Amazon rainforest had been replaced with carefully manicured gardens. Even the oceans had been reshaped to better suit alien aesthetics. "The younger generation doesn't even know we existed," Amy continued. "They've been taught that the galaxy was always at peace until the humans came along. According to their history books, we were savage warmongers who brought nothing but destruction wherever we went. Jake stood and walked to the viewport, staring out at the stars that had once welcomed human exploration. Somewhere out there, in the vast darkness, other human ships were hiding just as they were. The lucky ones, anyway. Many had been discovered over the centuries and destroyed without mercy. "Tell me about High Chancellor Vorthek," Jake said. Amy pulled up another file on her tablet. The image of a tall, reptilian creature appeared on the screen. Vorthak's scaled skin was a deep purple color, and his eyes glowed with an inner light that seemed to reflect his cruel intelligence. "He's been in power for over 200 years, Amy said. "He was the one who orchestrated the Great Cleansing, though he calls it the Great Liberation now. The official story is that he saved the galaxy from human aggression, but our intelligence suggests he was afraid of something else entirely." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "Before the Purge began, humanity was on the verge of exposing the Confederation's slave trade. We had evidence that they were kidnapping entire populations from primitive worlds and using them as forced labor. We were also developing technology that threatened their control over faster-than-light travel." Jake turned back to face the bridge. "Crew, the truth was even worse than he had imagined. Humanity hadn't been destroyed because they were violent or dangerous. They had been eliminated because they had stood in the way of alien oppression." "How many of us are left?" he asked. "Best estimates put our total population at around 40,000, Amy replied. "Spread across what remains of our fleet, hidden in asteroid fields and dead systems. We've been able to maintain our numbers through careful breeding programs and medical advances, but we're walking a tightrope." Jake nodded grimly. 40,000 souls, all that remained of a species that had once numbered in the billions. They had built cities that touched the clouds and sent ships to distant stars. They had created art and music and literature that moved hearts across the galaxy. Now they were reduced to hiding in the darkness, forgotten by history. "There's something else," Amy said, her voice dropping even lower. "Our deep space sensors have detected increased Confederation activity in this sector. They're conducting what they call archaeological surveys, but we think they're looking for us." Jake felt his blood run cold. If the Confederation found them, it would mean the end of everything. There would be no dramatic last stand, no heroic sacrifice. They would simply be erased, just like the rest of their species. But as he looked around the bridge at his crew, Jake saw something that gave him hope. Despite centuries of exile and loss, despite the weight of carrying their entire species on their shoulders, these people had not given up. They still believed that someday, somehow, humanity would reclaim its place among the stars. "Wake the senior staff," Jake ordered. "It's time we stopped running and started planning our return." Dr. Lisa Bennett sat in the deepest part of the new dawn, surrounded by screens that glowed with alien code and human algorithms working together in perfect harmony. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with the precision of a surgeon, each keystroke carefully planned and executed. For over 60 years, she had been humanity's ghost in the machine, infiltrating alien networks while remaining completely invisible. The room around her was filled with the quiet hum of quantum processors and the soft, blue light of holographic displays. Lines of code scrolled past her eyes at incredible speed, but Lisa could read them as easily as others read books. She had spent decades learning every alien programming language, every security protocol, every weakness in their supposedly impenetrable systems. "Jake," she called softly into her communicator. "You need to see this." Within minutes, Jake Morrison and Amy Foster had made their way down to Lisa's domain. The cyber warfare lab was cramped and cluttered, but it represented humanity's greatest weapon against their enemies. Here, in this small room, Lisa had been fighting a secret war for generations. "Show us what you found," Jake said, settling into a chair, beside her workstation. Lisa's fingers danced across the controls, and the main display filled with a complex diagram showing the Galactic Confederation's computer networks. Red lines connected thousands of nodes, representing communication channels, defense systems, and administrative databases that spanned across the galaxy. The aliens made a critical mistake when they tried to erase us from history. Lisa explained, her voice filled with quiet satisfaction. They never understood how our technology really worked. They saw our quantum encryption and adaptive AI systems as primitive and crude, so they left most of our code intact when they took over our systems. Amy leaned forward, studying the display. What do you mean they left it intact? Every human colony had quantum computers, neural networks, and self-modifying programs, Lisa continued. When the aliens conquered our worlds, they just built their systems on top of ours. They thought they were using superior technology, but really, they were just putting a new face on human engineering. Jake watched as Lisa highlighted certain sections of the network diagram. Tiny green dots appeared throughout the alien systems, like seeds scattered across a vast field. I've been planting ghost protocols for decades, Lisa said. Little pieces of human code that look like natural quirks in the alien systems. They spread slowly, copying themselves and evolving, but they've been dormant all this time. The aliens have been using our own technology against us, without even knowing it. How widespread are these ghost protocols? Jake asked. Lisa smiled. For the first time in months, they're everywhere. Communication networks, defense grids, planetary management systems, even the computers that control their artificial intelligences. If I activate them all at once, I could crash the entire Confederation infrastructure. But that would also reveal our existence, Amy pointed out. Not necessarily, Lisa replied. The beauty of the ghost protocols is that they can be activated selectively. I can make specific systems malfunction while leaving others intact. To the aliens, it will look like random technical problems, but the effects will be exactly what we want them to be. Jake stood and began pacing around the small room. The possibilities were staggering. With Lisa's ghost protocols, they could strike at the heart of the Confederation without revealing their location. They could disrupt alien operations, steal information, and maybe even turn their own systems against them. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ship, Commander Ryan Hayes was preparing for a very different kind of mission. He stood in the shuttle bay, checking his equipment one final time before departing on a reconnaissance mission to Earth itself. The stealth shuttle Whisper sat behind him, its hull covered in advanced cloaking technology that would make it invisible to alien sensors. Remember, this is strictly observation only, Jake had told him during the briefing. We need to know what the current state of our homeworld is, but we cannot risk exposure. Hayes nodded as he sealed his helmet and walked toward the shuttle. He had volunteered for this mission, knowing it might be a one-way trip. Earth was now the most heavily defended world in the Confederation, surrounded by orbital platforms and patrol fleets. Getting close enough to take detailed scans would require threading through a maze of sensors and weapons that could vaporize his tiny ship in an instant. The Whisper launched silently from the New Dawn shuttle bay and began its long journey toward the Sol system. Hayes settled in for the 2-week flight, knowing that what he found there might change everything for the human survivors. As the Whisper crossed the galaxy in stealth mode, Hayes couldn't help but think about what Earth had been like in the old days. He had been born on Luna Colony just months before the Great Cleansing began, and his only memories of the Earth were stories told by older survivors. They spoke of blue oceans and green forests, of great cities that sparkled at night, and of a world teeming with life and diversity. 2 weeks later, Hayes finally reached the outer edge of the Sol system. His sensors immediately detected the massive alien presence that now surrounded Earth. Orbital stations the size of small moons hung in space, their weapons pointed outward to defend against any possible threat. Patrol ships moved in careful patterns between the planets, their crews vigilant for any sign of intrusion. Hayes engaged the Whisper's most advanced stealth systems and began his approach to Earth. He had to be careful not to get too close to any of the patrol ships, but he also needed detailed scans of the planet's surface. The mission required perfect timing and nerves of steel. As Earth grew larger in his view screen, Hayes felt his heart break. The planet that had given birth to humanity was unrecognizable. Where once great mountain ranges had stood, the aliens had carved elaborate terraces and gardens. The polar ice caps had been reshaped into geometric patterns that pleased alien aesthetics. Even the weather patterns had been artificially controlled to create perfect conditions for the two alien colonists. But as Hayes continued his scans, his instruments detected something unexpected. Deep beneath the planet's surface, in places the aliens had never bothered to explore, there were still traces of human civilization. Hidden bunkers and sealed chambers showed up on his deep penetration scans, their energy signatures faint but unmistakably human. "My God," Hayes whispered to himself. "They're still there." The final phase of his mission took him to the former location of the United Nations building in New York, where that symbol of human cooperation had once stood. The aliens had built a massive crystal monument celebrating their victory over humanity. But Hayes's scans revealed something incredible. Buried far beneath the alien structure was a vault that his sensors couldn't penetrate. Protected by quantum shielding, it was definitely of human origin. Hayes carefully recorded everything he could, without getting too close to the alien detection. GRIDs, time capsules, hidden bunkers, sealed archives. The humans who had made their last stand on Earth had left gifts for any survivors who might one day return. As he prepared to leave the Sol system, Hayes took one last look at Earth through his view screen. The aliens had tried to erase every trace of human civilization, but they had failed. Hidden beneath their monuments and gardens, the true spirit of humanity still survived, waiting for the day when its children would come home. The discovery on Earth changed everything for Jake Morrison and his crew aboard the New Dawn. When Ryan Hayes returned from his reconnaissance mission with detailed scans of the hidden human bunkers, Jake knew the time for hiding was over. He stood in the ship's main briefing room, looking at the faces of his senior staff as they absorbed the implications of what Hayes had found. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jake began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "we are about to begin Operation Awakening. For 3 centuries, we have lived in the shadows while the galaxy celebrated our extinction. Today, we start reminding them that humanity is very much alive." Amy Foster activated the holographic display, showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy with human survivor locations marked in blue. 9 ships remained from their once mighty fleet, scattered across the void like lonely islands in an ocean of hostile space. "Phase 1 will be coordinated across all remaining human vessels," Jake continued. "We're going to rescue our enslaved brothers and sisters, expose the truth about the Great Cleansing, and show the galaxy that reports of our death have been greatly exaggerated." Chief Engineer Carlos Wright raised his hand from the back of the room. He was an older man whose hair had gone completely gray during their long exile, but his eyes still burned with the fire of human ingenuity. "Captain, our ships have been in hiding for centuries," Carlos said. "Most of our weapons and defense systems are outdated compared to current Confederation technology. How do we expect to survive open combat against their fleets?" Jake smiled grimly. "Carlos, that's where you come in." Hayes discovered something remarkable during his mission to Earth. Those hidden bunkers contain more than just historical records. They're packed with advanced human technology that the aliens never found. The display changed to show detailed scans of the underground facilities. Even through the interference of alien construction above, Hayes's instruments had detected the unmistakable signatures of human engineering. Fusion reactors still hummed with power after centuries of abandonment. Automated factories continued, producing materials and components. Most importantly, weapons research facilities remained intact with their projects still running. Our ancestors knew this day would come, Jake explained. They prepared for it, while the aliens thought they were destroying every trace of human civilization. Our people were building the tools we would need for our return. Dr. Lisa Bennett stood up next, her laptop already connected to the ship's main computer. I've been analyzing the data Hayes brought back, and I've identified 12 major installations that we can access remotely. My ghost protocols can activate their manufacturing systems and begin producing the weapons and ships we need. What about the enslaved humans? Asked Staff Sergeant Nia Rodriguez, her voice tight with controlled anger. Hayes found evidence of labor camps on dozens of worlds. We can't just leave them there while we prepare for war. Jake nodded solemnly. Nina had good reason for her concern. Her own parents had been captured during the final days of the Great Cleansing, and she had spent her entire life wondering if they were still alive somewhere in alien custody. That's phase 2 of the operation, Jake replied. Nina, you'll be leading rescue teams to extract as many enslaved humans as possible. But these won't be traditional military operations. We need to make it look like natural disasters or system failures. The aliens must not realize that we're behind the rescues. Nina's expression hardened with determination. How many do we think are still out there? Conservative estimates suggest at least 50,000, Amy replied, consulting her data tablet. They're scattered across mining worlds, agricultural colonies, and industrial facilities throughout Confederation space. Most of them have been told they're a primitive local species called workers. They don't even know they're human. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the magnitude of what they were attempting. There were 9 small ships with barely 40,000 people preparing to take on a galactic empire with trillions of citizens and millions of warships. I know what you're all thinking, Jake said. The odds are impossible. The Confederation is too strong, too well established. But remember what made humanity special. We never gave up, even when the situation seemed hopeless. We adapted. We innovated, and we found ways to win that our enemies never expected. Carlos Wright stood up again, but this time there was excitement in his voice. Captain, I've been reviewing the technical specifications Hayes gathered from Earth. The weapons and ship designs in those bunkers are at least 50 years ahead of anything the Confederation currently has in service. If we can access even a fraction of that technology, we could build a fleet that would give their Navy serious problems. Lisa Bennett added her own observations. My analysis of Confederation systems shows that they've become complacent over the centuries. Their security protocols are built on the assumption that no one would dare challenge their authority. They're not prepared for the kind of coordinated cyber warfare attack I can launch. Over the next several hours, the team worked out the details of Operation Awakening. Lisa would begin activating her ghost protocols gradually, starting with minor system failures that would look like normal technical problems. Meanwhile, Carlos would coordinate with the other human ships to begin retrofitting their vessels with recovered Earth technology. Nania would lead the most dangerous part of the mission. Using stealth shuttles and carefully planned diversions, she would infiltrate alien labor camps and extract enslaved humans. Each rescue had to be perfectly executed to avoid revealing their involvement. As the meeting concluded, Jake felt a mixture of hope and terror. They were about to emerge from the shadows after 3 centuries of hiding. There would be no going back once they began Operation Awakening. The first phase began immediately. On distant worlds throughout the galaxy, Lisa's ghost protocol started, activating in carefully choreographed sequence. Communication networks experienced brief outages. Defense satellites reported minor malfunctions. Administrative computers began displaying historical files that had supposedly been deleted centuries ago, to most alien citizens. These incidents seemed like routine technical problems. But to a few observant individuals, patterns began to emerge. Old records started appearing in databases. Archaeological sites experienced equipment failures that uncovered artifacts the Confederation had tried to hide. Slowly but surely, questions began to surface about the official version of galactic history. High Chancellor Vorthek was among the first to notice these anomalies. Sitting in his palace on the Zetherian homeworld, he reviewed reports of system failures and data corruptions from across the galaxy. His reptilian features twisted into a frown as he recognized something troubling in the pattern of incidents. Impossible, he muttered to himself, but deep in his mind, a fear that had haunted him for centuries began to stir. The fear that somewhere out in the darkness, humanity was still alive and still planning their revenge. As the first day of Operation Awakening drew to a close, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the new dawn, watching the stars through the main view screen. For the first time in 300 years, humanity was taking active steps to reclaim their place in the galaxy. The awakening had begun, and there would be no stopping it now. The galaxy was beginning to wake up from 3 centuries of lies, and the tremors could be felt on every world in the Confederation. Dr. Lisa Bennett watched from her command center aboard the New Dawn as her ghost protocols spread chaos across alien networks. What had started as minor glitches was now becoming a full-scale information revolution. On the trade world of Kepler 186F, a massive data corruption in the historical archives revealed documents that the Confederation had supposedly destroyed centuries ago. Images of human cities, human art, and human achievements flooded the planetary networks before emergency shutdowns could stop them. The local alien population stared in confusion at pictures of beings they had been told never existed. Lisa smiled as she monitored the reactions across dozens of worlds. The aliens had built their empire on the foundation of erasing human memory. But now that foundation was crumbling. Every day brought new revelations as buried files surfaced from the depths of their own computer systems. The vegan trade union is asking questions, Amy Foster reported from her station on the bridge. Their representatives are demanding explanations from the Confederation Council about these historical inconsistencies. Jake Morrison nodded grimly as he watched the intelligence reports flowing in. The vegans had always been reluctant members of the Confederation, joining only after their homeworld was threatened with economic sanctions. If they were starting to doubt the official history, other species might follow their lead. Meanwhile, Staff Sergeant Nina Rodriguez was preparing for the most dangerous mission of her life. The stealth shuttle she commanded had been modified. With recovered human technology, its hull now nearly invisible to alien sensors. Behind her sat 12 of the best soldiers remaining in the human fleet, each one carefully chosen for this critical operation. Their target was a mining facility on the planet Proxima 7, where intelligence suggested over 3,000 enslaved. Humans worked in the deep tunnels extracting rare metals for the Confederation. These humans had been told they were a local species called miners, bred specifically for underground labor. They had no idea of their true heritage. Remember, Nina told her team as they approached the planet, these people don't know they're human. 3 centuries of conditioning have made them believe they're something else entirely. We need to be gentle when we reveal the truth to them. The mining facility was a massive complex that stretched for hundreds of kilometers across the planet's surface. Alien overseers lived in comfortable habitats, while the human slaves worked in dangerous conditions far below ground. The death rate was high, but the Confederation simply brought in more workers to replace those who died. Nina's shuttle landed in a remote section of the mining complex during the night shift change. Using advanced human infiltration techniques, her team disabled the security systems and made their way into the worker barracks. What they found there broke their hearts. The enslaved humans were barely recognizable as the same species. Generations of poor nutrition and harsh treatment had made them smaller and weaker than their free cousins. Their eyes held no hope, only the dull acceptance of beings who had never known anything but servitude. "Listen to me carefully," Nina whispered to a group of workers who had gathered around her team. "You are not what they have told you. You are human beings, descendants of the greatest species this galaxy has ever known." The workers stared at her in confusion. One elderly female stepped forward, her face scarred from years of mining accidents. "You speak strangely," the woman said in broken galactic standard. "Workers not understand. Workers only work." Nina felt tears forming in her eyes, but she pressed on. From her pack, she pulled out a small device that projected holographic images. The first image showed Earth as it had been before the Great Cleansing, blue and green and beautiful. The workers gasped in wonder at the sight of their ancestral home. "This is where your people came from," Nina explained. "This is what you were before they made you slaves." More images followed, showing human cities, human art, human families living in freedom. Slowly, something began to change in the workers. Eyes. Deep genetic memories started stirring, awakening instincts that had been suppressed for generations. As Nina's team worked to awaken the enslaved humans on Proxima 7, similar operations were taking place across the galaxy. On the agricultural world of Kepler 442b, another rescue team was liberating human farmers who had been told they were plant tenders. On the industrial planet of Vol 359c, human factory workers were learning their true identity for the first time in their lives. Each rescue operation was carefully coordinated to look like a natural disaster or system failure. Explosions in the mining tunnels would provide cover for the escaping humans. Equipment malfunctions would disable security systems at exactly the right moments. To the alien overseers, it appeared that their facilities were experiencing an unusual run of bad luck. High Chancellor Vorthak was no longer dismissing these incidents as coincidences. In his palace on the Zetherian homeworld, he studied reports from across the galaxy with growing alarm. The pattern was too perfect, too coordinated to be accidental. "Summon the inner council," he ordered his aide, a thin creature with purple skin and glowing eyes. "Tell them we have a crisis that threatens the stability of the entire Confederation." Within hours, representatives from all 12 member species of the Confederation had gathered in the massive council chamber. The room was filled with beings of different shapes and sizes, united only by their shared fear of what might be happening to their carefully ordered galaxy. "Fellow counselors," Vorthak began, his voice echoing through the vast space, "we face a threat that I had hoped never to see again. The incidents we have been experiencing across our territory are not random equipment failures. They are coordinated attacks by an enemy we thought we had eliminated forever." Murmurs of confusion rippled through the assembly. The younger council members had never heard of humanity except as ancient history, while the older ones remembered the Great Cleansing with mixed feelings of pride and secret shame. "The humans are alive," Vorthak continued, his words falling like bombs on the gathered aliens. "Somehow, they survived our purge and have been hiding in the darkness for 3 centuries. Now they have returned to claim their revenge." The council chamber erupted in chaos as representatives began shouting questions and accusations. How was this possible? How many humans were still alive? What did they want? Vorthak raised his clawed hand for silence. "I am implementing emergency protocols across all Confederation space. Every system will be searched, every anomaly investigated, every possible hiding place explored. We will find these human survivors and finish what we started 3 centuries ago." But even as Vorthak spoke those words, He felt a cold fear in his heart. The humans had always been unpredictable, always found ways to survive when survival seemed impossible. If they had managed to hide for 300 years, what other surprises might they have prepared? On distant Proxima 7, Nina Rodriguez watched as the last group of rescued humans boarded her shuttle. Over 2,000 workers had chosen to come with her, leaving behind the only life they had ever known for the promise of freedom. Among the stars dot, as the shuttle lifted off from the mining facility, Nina activated a final surprise that Carlos Wright had prepared. Hidden charges throughout the complex exploded in perfect sequence, bringing down the alien administrative buildings while leaving the worker barracks intact. To anyone investigating the incident, it would look like a tragic industrial accident. "Where are we going?" asked the elderly worker woman who had first spoken to Nina. Nina smiled as she looked out at the stars streaming past the shuttle's viewports. "Home," she said simply. "We're taking you home to be with your own people." Behind them, the mining facility burned in the darkness, its alien overseers fleeing in panic. It was just one small victory in a war that had been raging for centuries, but it represented something far more important than the numbers suggested. It represented hope, and hope was the most dangerous weapon humanity had ever possessed. The final battle for humanity's future began not with the thunder of weapons, but with a single message broadcast across every communication channel in the galaxy. Dr. Lisa Bennett had spent weeks preparing for this moment, carefully timing the activation of her ghost protocols to create maximum impact dot at exactly midnight Galactic Standard Time. Every screen, every communication device, and every public display in Confederation space flickered and changed. The image that appeared was simple but powerful. Earth as it had been before the Great Cleansing, blue and green and alive, slowly rotating in the darkness of space. No words accompanied the image, but none were needed. After 30 seconds, text appeared below the planet in every known galactic language. 3 words that sent shockwaves through the alien leadership and hope through the hearts of oppressed species everywhere. Humanity remembers everything. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Dawn, watching as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The message had reached every corner of Confederation space simultaneously, impossible to block or trace. Alien citizens who had never heard of humanity were demanding answers from their governments. Species that had been suppressed by the Confederation saw the broadcast as proof that resistance was possible. "Admiral," Amy Foster said, using Jake's new rank for the first time, "we're receiving signals from 17 different species offering to join our cause. The Vegan Trade Union has officially withdrawn from the Confederation. The Centauri Republic is mobilizing their defense fleet." Jake nodded grimly. The galaxy was choosing sides, and battle lines were being drawn across 1,000 light years of space. But he knew that the real fight would take place in one location. High Chancellor Vorthek would never allow humanity to reclaim Earth without a fight. The human fleet had grown over the past months as Carlos Wright's teams worked around the clock to activate the hidden manufacturing facilities. What had once been 9 aging ships was now a force of over 200 vessels, each one equipped with technology that the aliens had never seen before. The rescued humans from the labor camps had swelled their numbers to nearly 90,000 souls, all of them eager to strike back at their former oppressors. Commander Ryan Hayes stood in the hangar bay of the newly commissioned warship Phoenix, watching as the last of the fighter craft were loaded aboard. The ship was a marvel of human engineering, built from plans that had been waiting in the Earth bunkers for 3 centuries. Its hull gleamed with adaptive armor that could repair itself in battle, and its weapon systems were decades ahead of anything in the Confederation fleet. "All ships report ready for departure," Hayes announced over the fleet communications network. "Estimated time to Earth orbit is 72 hours at maximum burn." The journey to Earth felt like both an eternity and an instant to the human survivors. Many of them had been born in the depths of space and had never seen their ancestral home. Others remembered Earth from before the Great Cleansing and wondered what they would find when they arrived. High Chancellor Vorthak was waiting for them with the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Over 5,000 Confederation warships surrounded Earth in multiple defensive rings, their weapons trained on the approaches to the planet. The alien leader had decided that if he could not have Earth as a monument to his victory, he would destroy it rather than let humanity reclaim it. "My fellow Confederates," Vorthak broadcast to his fleet as the human ships appeared at the edge of the system. "Today, we face the final test of our civilization. These human terrorists seek to destroy everything we have built, everything we represent. They offer only chaos and destruction, as their species always has." But as the two fleets faced each other across the void, something unexpected happened. Ships began leaving the Confederation formation, their crews refusing to fire on the returning humans. The Andromedans, the Taosetians, and dozens of other species that had been forced into the Confederation remembered now what humanity had really been like. They remembered the humans who had fought for justice, who had defended the weak, who had offered friendship to all sentient beings. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships moved with impossible grace, their adaptive AI systems learning and countering alien tactics in real time. The technology recovered from Earth's hidden bunkers proved its worth as human weapons, cut through Confederation shields like they were made of paper. But the humans were not fighting for conquest or revenge. Every shot was carefully aimed to disable rather than destroy. Every boarding action focused on capturing alien crews rather than killing them. Even in the heat of battle, humanity showed the compassion that had made them special centuries ago. Jake Morrison led the final assault on Vorthak's flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Victory. As human Marines fought their way through the ship's corridors, they encountered alien crew members who surrendered rather than face certain death. The humans accepted their surrender and treated them with dignity, even as the battle raged around them. The confrontation between Jake and Vorthak took place on the bridge of the alien flagship, with Earth visible through the massive view screen behind them. The Zephyrian leader stood defiant even as his ship systems failed around him, his reptilian features twisted with hatred and fear. "You think you have won," Vorthak snarled, his clawed hand hovering over a control panel. "But I will not let you have your victory. If I cannot rule this galaxy, I will see it burn." Jake realized with horror that Vorthak was preparing to activate a planet-killing weapon hidden in Earth's crust. The alien leader had been willing to destroy humanity's homeworld rather than surrender it. "Stop," Jake commanded, his weapon trained on the alien chancellor. "Destroying Earth won't save your empire. It will only prove that everything we said about you was true." But Vorthak's hand was already moving toward the activation switch. In that moment, Jake made a decision that would define the future of human-alien relations. Instead of shooting the Zephyrian leader, he threw himself forward, tackling Vorthak away from the controls. The two beings fought desperately as Earth hung in the balance below them. Around the bridge, human and alien crew members watched in stunned silence as their leaders decided the fate of worlds with their bare hands. In the end, it was Ryan Hayes and Nina Rodriguez who saved Earth, fighting their way to the planet's surface and disabling the weapon from within. As the device powered down harmlessly, the remaining Confederation forces finally surrendered. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Jake stood on Earth's surface for the first time in his life, breathing air that smelled of growing things and feeling wind that carried the promise of rain. Around him, humans and aliens worked together to rebuild what had been destroyed, to create something better than what had come before. a young human girl approached him, born free under Earth's sky during the months of reconstruction. She looked up at Jake with curious eyes and asked the question that would shape their future. "What happens now?" she asked. Jake smiled as he looked out at the stars that were once again open to human exploration. "Now we make sure that no species ever has to hide in the darkness again. Now we build a galaxy where everyone can be free." The child nodded solemnly and ran back to play with her friends, both human and alien. In that moment, Jake knew that humanity had truly returned home, not just to Earth, but to their place as guardians of justice and hope among the stars.